All right. Go!
News your button. New warrior now.
This Parks.
Microphone check 1, 2. What is this?
News your button. New warrior now.
Parks on the boards.
Yes. Good evening.
Hi there.
How you doing, Dr. Fauci?
Dr. Fauci, how you doing?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Well, we're looking for you to tell us how we are is what we're doing.
Okay. You asked me, I'll give you the information I can.
Good.
That sounds good.
We're going to have a nice, fun-loving little segment here. We're probably a little different from some of the press you've done, so just bear with us, okay?
I'm with you all the way.
I love it. Your people they told me you were with us. I like that. All right, so we're live. We're good. Dr. Fauci, are you good as well?
I'm good.
All right, so we have a really special guest here. I want to say that we're honored to have you, and your talking points have been points of contention here on this show. We have Dr. Fauci joining us. Let me hit the round of applause for such a, there we go, for such an esteemed gentleman.
Dr. Fauci, in our culture, we do something called gunshots. We don't want you to be scared if you hear gunshots.
Yeah,
that just means that we salute you. There you go. There's a gunshot.
Let's give him a gunshot.
You know what I'm saying?
Dr. Fauci, welcome to the Joe Budden podcast. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Listen, man. Let's get right into it, Doc. It seems, right? It seems that you're on a press run. Are you on a press run?
And when is your album coming out?
Yeah.
You've been on a press run for a good year,
Yeah, it's been about a year. It's been a very unusual year. This is a historic, terrible outbreak that we've been subjected to. And my main job is to develop the vaccines and the drugs and the things for the treatment and prevention, as well as being what I'm doing with you, trying to spread the word about how people can keep safe, and particularly when we get a better accessibility of vaccines, that everybody should be taking a vaccine. So that's what I do.
Well, that's where my line of questioning stems from, Doc, because if you're here with us, and boy, am I happy that you're here with us, to me, a press run signifies a message needing to be heard. And for such an urgent message like this, why wouldn't a ticker just come across our screen no matter what we were watching on television? Why wouldn't something just come across our phone? Like, why is this sole responsibility seemingly on your shoulders?
Well, it isn't. There are a number of other people that are out there. I do it a lot because I feel I can communicate well at multiple levels with multiple levels of people, the school kids, adults, people who are working in white collar, blue collar, whatever, because that's my background, that I can communicate well. And that's the reason why I do it. And it works. I mean, I think if you be straight with people, be open and honest and talk straight language with them, they'll hear what you have to say and understand. And I think that's as important as some of the science that we do, is to get people to understand why it's important to do things like protecting yourself from infection, your family, and your community.
Yeah, but are we going about it this way because the government's idea of what's better for the American people is different from what the actual health board and the health people think is good for the American people?
No, if what you're talking about is more public service announcements, I think that you got a good point there. There probably should be more of that. The CDC does some of that. I think we always need to be out there more. And that's the reason why I put the extra effort into being out there with the media, because I think it's really important to get the message to the American public.
Well, how much were you either silenced or suppressed with delivering some of that information last year, especially with the election happening?
Not really very much at all. It's a very interesting thing with regard to getting out on the press. Sometimes you're out there a lot and there's no problem. Other times there's an inhibition for doing it. It hasn't really been consistent. One of the things that's important to understand is that since I represent the government, because I work at an organization, the NIH, which is part of the federal government, that when I get asked to go on things like Sunday shows or major network and cable in the evening, it's important to get cleared by the communications people in the White House. Sometimes you get cleared with no problem, and sometimes you don't. It's really, in many respects, unpredictable. That's the reason why there are flashes where you might see me on TV a lot, and then all of a sudden you don't see me for a while. That's something that's not in my control.
Yeah, but when you speak to things that aren't in control, when you mention White House, a couple of words that come to mind for me is capitalism and consumerism. How much of that plays a part in this?
No.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
No, I'm telling you the truth. I mean, when I'm out here, I think you can bet the farm that it's going to be the truth, and I'm going to tell you what really is going on. I have never, ever used any political issues to prevent me from telling the truth to the American public. And I've been doing this now for almost 40 years, whether it was back in the days of HIV/AIDS in the 80s, when I first started doing it, to influenza, to Ebola, to Zika. The one thing you can count on is that you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an honest answer.
Okay, awesome. So honestly, tell me how you felt when Trump was telling the American people that we should drink bleach and that heat would effectively get rid of this.
Well, I wasn't there when he said it, but I certainly think that that was not a good thing, because there were so many people there who would have interpreted that and perhaps have hurt themselves. And that's the reason why the CDC and the FDA and everybody else, and myself included, literally the next day said, hey, that's something you should not be doing. Don't interpret those words to think that that's something you should be doing.
But Doc, those actions are what says to people like me that the health people and the government may not be aligned.
Well, you know, there were things that I think you're aware of that were said at the level of a politician that I disagreed with openly. I mean, if you go back and look at the history of this year, there were sometimes things that were said that I disagree with, such as whether or not the drug hydroxychloroquine works or doesn't work. You know, it's very clear that the scientific data indicated that it is of no benefit in people with COVID-19. And there were many people, not many, but some that were saying that it worked. And I got up there and said that it didn't, because I speak not by any political ideology. Everything I say is based on scientific evidence and scientific data. And the scientific data indicated that something does not work. Therefore, I say it doesn't work. So
you are not incentivized in any other way outside of the good fortune of the American people in your decision making?
That is 100% true.
Got it.
Quick question, Doc. You were around for President Reagan and the AIDS in the 80s when that came. Would you compare President Reagan's dismissal of AIDS in the 80s to President Trump's dismissal of COVID?
No, they were really very different. The issue what happened with President Reagan is that he didn't dismiss it. He did not give it the bully pulpit of the presidency to get out there and embrace the people who were suffering from it. Because at the time, remember, it was mostly almost all men who have sex with men and injection drug users. And he didn't. What he did is that he lost an opportunity to use the what we call the bully pulpit of the presidency to give a good message. He never really went out there and dismissed it. He just should have put a little bit more effort in. And that's the reason why back then I had to step up and be talking about it to the public. And it's really interesting because I was the face of the federal government. And when the activists saw my face, they said, well, he's for the government. And they started, demonstrating against me until I brought them in and said, hey, wait a minute. I'm with you guys and ladies.
Right.
I'm on your side. Let's figure out how we can help each other.
I feel like some of that's happening now.
That's what happened. Yeah.
I feel like you're going through some of that now. Am I wrong? I feel like you've been villainized to some degree by certain, sections.
You've been villainized. You have been. How do you deal with that part even?
Well, I focus on what my goal is. And this gets back to something you said a minute ago, Joe, that my main and only goal or domain is the health and the safety of the American public. That's the only thing I care about. So all the other stuff, the adulation, which is nice, as well as the threats against my life, which are not very nice, as well as people publicly criticizing me, calling me a liar, calling me a fake news kind of thing. No, I don't like that, but I don't let it bother me because to me, that's just a distraction. And I don't want it to distract against what I really want to do is to do things like develop a vaccine, which we successfully did. Now the goal is to make sure people take that vaccine because it will be life-saving for them, their families, as well as for society. All that other stuff, Joe, that doesn't bother me.
I want to get to the vaccine, but I don't want to gloss over it. So you're saying the death threats and things of that nature don't really affect your psyche or paranoia at all?
No, it
personally.
Doesn't.
Wow.
It doesn't. I mean, obviously, I have to have federal agents who protect me all the time.
You got them peoples with you, yeah, I know.
Oh, you got the boys with you. Okay.
Yeah.
I would feel safe too. All right, so we got a vaccine that they say is coming.
A couple of them.
How many vaccines are coming, Doc?
Well, there are two that have been proven to be very, very efficacious and safe. We have another one that just finished the clinical trial. Likely we'll get a look at the data at the end of January. I believe, though you never want to get ahead of yourself and predict something until you actually see the data. But another company is going to be coming online with doses probably in February. And then there are two other companies that are in trial right now. Totally, we're supporting directly and indirectly 6 vaccine candidates. 5 of them have either completed clinical trial or are ending or in the process of ending the clinical trial. So within a period of time, we're going to have at least 5 candidates that are going to be ready to go.
Okay, are any one of these vaccines more recommended than the rest? No?
Well, I tell you why. We only have data on 2 of them, Joe. That means that we only can pass judgment on 2 of them. And interestingly, the 2 of them, the one from Moderna company and the one from the Pfizer company, they're almost identical. They are both 94 to 95% efficacious, which is really huge. That is a really, really good vaccine. That's 94 to 95% effective.
Will this be administered differently contingent upon age?
No, it's the prime followed by a boost. When you get the Moderna product, you get an injection. 28 days later, you get a boost. When you do the Pfizer, you get injected. 21 days later, you get a boost. Doesn't matter how old you are. We haven't proven yet that it's safe and effective in children, but that study will be done in the next couple of months.
Don't you think that's important?
No, it's very important. And the reason we delay is that children are vulnerable, Joe, and you want to make sure that you're dealing with a product that's really safe and really effective in healthy adults before you subject a child to it.
That makes sense.
Quick question, Doc. How come we never shut down the airlines? Since this COVID is so airborne and it's so contagious and people, they space us out before you get on the plane. Yeah. You have to stay so many feet apart. But then once you get on the flight, somebody sitting right behind you. That's Doc, not 6 feet apart.
There's been a lot of traveling, Doc. I don't know if you've been in airports. I've been all over the place.
No, I know that. I haven't traveled in almost a year because of the fact that just the question you asked before. I've been working, literally 18 hours a day since January with no days off. I don't have time to get on a plane. But you're right. There is danger anywhere when there's people who are infected. But you know what they have on planes? That the circulation and the filtering of the air is pretty good. So there really have not been a lot of infections transmitted on planes that you can definitively document. So even though intuitively you would think it's the worst place to be because you're cooped up in a closed place for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, in particularly short flights, there really has not been a lot of infection that's transmitted on a plane. So even though we kind of knee-jerk think that that's a bad place to be, in fact, in reality, it's not been bad.
What do you say, Doc, to the person that caught COVID, maybe was asymptomatic or didn't have the roughest of times on it? Why would that person be inclined to take this vaccine?
Well, that's a great question. And the reason is we do not know how long the protection that's afforded by someone who's been exposed and infected, how long that lasts. And the reason is there are similar viruses like coronaviruses that are maybe 15 to 30% of all the common colds that you and I and everybody else gets. That gets recurrence. So you can get reinfected with the same virus.
I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you speak to the American people's fear. What I'm saying, Doc, is for the person that don't have any fear, for the person that got it and is totally fine with the effects that it had on them specifically, and is saying, hey, if I get it again, I'm cool. What do you say to that person? Not
guaranteed, Joe. You're no guarantee to be cool.
Got it.
That's the point.
hey, you're not going to be cool. I got it. No, I understand what you're saying. What do you say then? What do you say to black and brown women who die at hospitals disproportionately? Those numbers are different. What do you say to them about trusting some of the words from our health officials?
Yeah.
Of course you understand why. What I'm saying is, of course you understand why some people are skeptical about any word from health officials or the government. So there's some reluctancy there. What do you say?
The reluctance is understandable. It's understandable because if you look at the history of how black and brown people have been treated by the federal government in medical situations dating all the way back to the Tuskegee, the shameful Tuskegee experiments, and even others that have occurred since then, there's a reason to be skeptical. But what we're saying is that safeguards have been put in place since then that would never allow that to happen again. And black and brown people who suffer disproportionately from COVID-19 is a reflection of so many things that's wrong with society, particularly the underlying comorbidities that black and brown people have. That is not a racial issue. It's an issue that is called the social determinants of health. From the time you're born, the lack of accessibility to good diets, the lack of accessibility of an economic status that will allow you to take care of your health. So as a group, with exceptions, obviously, there's more hypertension, there's more diabetes, there's more obesity, there's more heart disease in black and brown people than there are in the general population.
Well, I'm going to challenge. And after you say all that, we also happen to be last on the totem pole in America. So at some point, racism would have to come up in conversations of healthcare, right? Because when you talk about people from impoverished neighborhoods or people that don't have the best healthcare situation, health insurance, whatever, won't we be last in line to get the good stuff?
No, not at all. Not at all. You're not going to be last in line.
I got to sleep outside the hospital. What do we have to do?
No, all you got to do is then when the vaccine becomes available, go up and say, I want a shot of vaccine, and you'll get it.
That's simple.
We need to wrap up. Sorry.
Right.
Well, listen, do you guys have any last words for all?
How much longer?
I have one if I can, but go ahead.
How much longer do you see us, particularly New York City, with the indoor dining? Because I know that the indoor dining infection rate was very low, maybe 1%, and we had to shut down indoor dining again. So how long do you see before that is something that we completely move past and get rid of?
The acceleration of cases in New York are very troublesome, and in California. I think you're going to have to see a turnaround of the test positivity to get down much lower before they do that. So, I mean, it's understandable. What I'd like to see is that when you tell restaurants they need to shut down, or bars, that the federal government gives more money and support to the people who own those establishments so they don't go out of business, to just keep them over until things get better and they can open up again.
My final question and a half, Dr. Fauci. I don't know if sex increases the probability of catching this coronavirus, but what do you say to the people that have lost courtships and romantic relationships because we're unable to take these women outside so they can Instagram things? Like, tell me how I explain to a woman that is cutting me off from sexual activity that, hey, I'm protecting us.
Right. Yeah, I think just what you said. The most important thing right now is helping each other save each other's lives. Things that are pleasurable for us have to be put on hold sometimes, but we're going through a historic affront to the health of this world, including the United States. We've just got to pull together and realize that sacrifices are being made at every single level, including personal relationships, because of that. Let's get through it together, get this thing behind us, and then get back to a normal life.
That's not going to work on my Instagram, girls, but I appreciate it. Dr. Fauci, I want to thank you for taking the time. Hey, just out of curiosity, how long would it take to distribute this thing throughout the country? That's my final question for you.
What, the vaccine?
Yes, sir.
You know, I think if we put the full court press on it, we can get it vaccinated 85% of the people by the end of the summer.
So there's a chance we can go outside this year?
Yeah, there is a chance that we can be back to normal, not completely normal.
Of course.
But approaching normal by sometime in the fall, if 2021.
Dr. Fauci, I really appreciate you taking the time to
That's a good suit, Doc.
come
You look
fuck
good
with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very sharp.
And we support you. Friend of the show, Dr. Fauci. Let me get a round of applause, man. Again, thank you, Dr. Fauci. Vaccine coming to your SoundClouds. Vaccine coming soon. Hopefully we can get this thing together, man, and have a real good 2021.
Agreed.
Again, Dr. Fauci, thank you.
Thank you.
We support you, and we appreciate you.
Take care.
100%.
Be safe out there.
I got to say, man, the Fauster was pretty cool.
Yeah, the guy's good.